Imagine, if you will, you're standing on the edge of a lake in Ukraine.
Okay.
And this is not exactly a pristine vacation spot. We're talking about a heavily irradiated area, a massive lingering environmental hazard.
Right, something that requires serious, environmental science to tackle.
Exactly. But now imagine someone walks right up to the shoreline and they pull out a bottle of something labeled, and I kid you not, Kabbalah fluid.
Wait, Kabbalah fluid?
Yes. And without a single hint of irony, they just pour it into the water, entirely convinced that the mystical properties of this liquid are going to physically alter the isotopes and just neutralize the radiation.
I mean, it sounds like magical realism.
It really does.
It's literally the belief that, spiritual energy can physically override the half-life of radioactive material.
Right. It sounds like complete fiction. But according to the source material we were diving into today, this was an actual initiative championed by Madonna. Yeah. And it really gets to the core of a truly baffling phenomenon that we're exploring for you today. We're looking at a piece titled The Psychology of Celebrity Pseudoscience and Grandiosity.
Such a fascinating read.
It is. And the mission today is to figure out the internal mechanisms that cause incredibly famous people, pop stars, actors, daytime hosts, to suddenly conclude that they possess this hidden, superior understanding of complex fields like physics, immunology, or psychiatry.
Yeah, but before we move into the structural psychology of all this, I do need to set a firm boundary for you, the listener.
Good idea.
Because the text we're analyzing today covers some highly charged medical and psychiatric topics. We're going to be touching on the discourse surrounding vaccines and autism, psychiatric medicine, hormone replacement therapies, things that get very heated.
Extremely heated.
Right. So in this deep dive, we are strictly analyzing the psychological theories and behavioral frameworks presented by the author. We're examining the mechanics of fame. We are not validating these medical claims, nor are we taking sides, endorsing, or condemning any specific viewpoints of the author, the celebrities, left-wing politics, right-wing politics, whatever. Our focus is entirely on decoding the psychological phenomena outlined in the source material.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start by looking at the specific themes of these wild celebrity claims, rather than just, listing them off.
Right, finding the patterns.
Exactly. Then we'll decode the clinical data behind fame and narcissism. After that, we'll explore the cognitive dissonance of something called existential guilt. And finally, we will look at how modern culture structurally insulates and encourages this behavior.
So to understand the psychology, we really have to look at the patterns in the claims themselves first, because the source catalogs this massive scale of grandiosity. But what stands out is that these celebrities, they consistently target disciplines that deal with fundamental human anxieties.
Like disease and aging.
Exactly. Disease, aging, mental health, things that terrify people.
That pattern is so clear when you look at the medical claims the source highlights. I mean, take Jenny McCarthy. She wasn't just skeptical of vaccines.
Right.
The text notes her absolute bewilderment that the National Institutes of Health ignored her, quote-unquote, proof that the MMR vaccine causes autism.
She thought she had outsmarted the NIH.
Yeah. And when they rejected it, she attributed the rejection to this sprawling conspiracy, which the author actually jokes must be run by some Dr. Evil type pharmaceutical consortium.
Which is, quite the mental leap.
It is. And then you have Suzanne Somers. She framed her hormone replacement program not as a standard endocrine treatment, which would be a medical thing, but as an actual elixir of youth.
And notice the shift in language there.
Elixir.
Yeah, elixir. By using a concept like that, the claim is moved entirely out of the realm of falsifiable medical science and just dropped straight into mythology.
You can't exactly run a randomized controlled trial on an elixir.
Exactly. You just can't. And that same mechanism applies when celebrities target the hard sciences or psychiatry. Like the source brings up Tom Cruise. Oh, right.
Castigating the entire field of psychiatry as pure quackery.
And his justification was just that he had, quote, studied its history.
Right. And then there's Deepak Chopra utilizing quantum mechanics.
Yeah, the author has a field day with that one.
They really do. The author notes that Chopra explains the causes of disease using this wide range of semi-random New Age concepts. They even reference his interaction with Richard Dawkins.
Oh, the evolutionary biologist.
Yes. The text contrasts Dawkins's rigid methodology with Chopra's tendency to just take highly complex terms like quantum entanglement and use them as a catch-all explanation for, human consciousness or biological healing.
It sounds scientific enough to to camouflage the pseudoscience.
It provides a veneer of academic rigor. And the author points out that this ecosystem of alternative reality is heavily enabled by cultural titans.
They bring up Oprah, right?
They do. They highlight this article from Salon.com that questioned Oprah's role in all this lunacy. The text asks, how dare anyone question Oprah's omniscience and omnipotence? Because when a figure with that much cultural gravity validates a pseudoscientific claim, it ceases to be just a fringe Hollywood quirk.
It becomes a societal problem.
Yeah. The text even notes that a formal organization, Sense About Science, had to be established just to run interference on these celebrity claims.
Which is wild.
It's like having a friend who reads one internet article and suddenly thinks they can perform surgery.
Right.
But, magnified by millions of followers. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, but supercharged.
Absolutely.
Because usually, when someone wildly overestimates their competence, reality eventually pushes back. Like, you try to fix your car's transmission based on a single blog post, the car doesn't start, and you were immediately humbled.
Right, reality hits you.
But in the celebrity bubble, reality never gets the chance to push back because the entourage is literally paid to clap for the broken car.
What's fascinating here is that the author isn't actually interested in debunking the mechanics of Kabbalah fluid or hormone elixirs.
They don't care about the fake science itself.
No, the objective is to diagnose the psychological baseline required to broadcast these ideas to millions without a second of hesitation.
And to do that, the source argues we have to look at who seeks out fame in the first place.
Right.
The text makes a pretty blunt assertion. They say celebrities are a self-selected group of narcissists.
Which sounds harsh, but they back it up.
They do add a caveat that, a small percentage genuinely just love the craft of acting or musicianship. But the vast majority of quote-unquote wannabes are chasing the specific outcomes of fame.
The money, the visibility, the adulation.
Exactly.
And the author grounds this in empirical data. They specifically reference a study conducted by S. Mark Young and Drew Pinsky. It's, Dr. Drew from Celebrity Rehab.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they administered the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, which is the standard psychological tool for measuring clinical narcissism.
And they gave this to celebrities.
Hundreds of them. And the data supported the contention that individuals in the entertainment industry score significantly higher for narcissism than the general population.
Which raises a really interesting structural question about the data.
Oh.
Is it the chicken or the egg? Does the visceral, constant adulation of fans fundamentally alter a normal person's brain chemistry, turning them into a narcissist?
Yeah.
Or do people who already score off the charts naturally gravitate toward careers where millions of people will scream their name?
It's a great question, and the author's synthesis points to a compounding loop.
A loop.
Yeah. It begins with the self-selection we just discussed. You start with an individual who already has a high baseline of exhibitionism and entitlement.
Okay, the pre-existing narcissist.
Wait. Then you place them into an environment designed to systematically dismantle their reality testing.
So the environment acts as an accelerant.
Precisely. I mean, think about the conditions described in the source. Outlandish sums of money, every physical and logistical whim catered to instantly.
Just constant yes men.
Yeah. The text paints this picture of fans lining up for hours just to glimpse Tom Cruise exiting a limousine. And they're screaming with what the author terms a visceral religious fervor. So when a pre-existing narcissist is submerged in an environment where people literally treat them as a deity 24 hours a day, the internal psychological checks and balances they collapse.
The hype is internalized as objective truth.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I can see how that feedback loop creates an egomaniac who, demands green M&Ms in their dressing room and thinks they are the center of the universe.
Sure.
But demanding luxury is very different from demanding that the NIH restructure its epidemiological research.
Very different.
So to bridge that gap, the source introduces a theory that completely subverts the narcissism data. They call it existential guilt.
Right. And the concept of existential guilt is basically the pivot point of the author's entire psychological diagnosis.
Yeah.
To explain the mechanism, the text compares it directly to survivor's guilt.
Right, like if you survive a horrific plane crash where others perished, your brain struggles to process the randomness of it.
You develop this profound guilt asking, why was I spared? What makes me so special?
Exactly. And the source argues that celebrities experience a mirrored psychological mechanism regarding their staggering wealth and their platform.
Deep down in their cognitive architecture, they're aware of the disproportionate nature of their reward.
Right.
They know they receive demigod-level adulation and astronomical wealth simply for, memorizing lines or singing a catchy melody.
Doesn't mathematically add up in their head.
No, it doesn't. The cognitive dissonance between the societal worship they receive and the objective value of their labor creates this intense, gnawing guilt.
So to resolve that dissonance, they have to balance the scales.
Yes.
They desperately need to prove that they are not just a mere celebrity. They intervene in global health crises or rewrite psychiatric paradigms to justify their own existence.
Because if they can cure autism or neutralize nuclear radiation, then the millions of dollars in the streaming fans are suddenly warranted.
It is a massive defense mechanism against imposter syndrome.
The grandiosity is basically masquerading as philanthropy. They aren't trying to save the world. They are trying to save their own self-concept.
Wait a minute, though. I am struggling to reconcile this with the data from the Pinsky study.
How so?
Well, if we just establish that these individuals are raging narcissists who score at the top of the inventory for entitlement, how is there any room left for existential guilt?
Yeah.
Doesn't guilt require a baseline of humility and empathy that clinical narcissism inherently lacks?
That is a brilliant point, and the author actually anticipates that exact paradox.
Okay, because it seems contradictory.
It seems impossible to be a megalomaniac and harbor deep insecurities about your inherent worth simultaneously.
Right.
But the resolution lies in the spectrum of narcissism. The text suggests that the specific celebrities who engage in this pseudoscientific savior behavior actually possess slightly less clinical narcissism than their peers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they retain just a microscopic shred of self-insight.
So the ones trying to play doctor are actually the ones whose egos aren't entirely impenetrable yet.
That's the argument. And the author illustrates this spectrum by contrasting Sean Penn with Paris Hilton.
The tortured artist versus the oblivious narcissist.
Exactly. The text uses Sean Penn as the archetype of the individual burdened by their platform.
Okay.
He clearly possesses the ego required of a massive movie star, but he also experiences the cognitive dissonance of existential guilt.
And that dissonance drives him to inject himself into complex geopolitical crises or international disaster zones.
Right, he has to validate his privilege.
But then you have Paris Hilton.
Conversely, Paris Hilton is presented as possessing zero existential guilt.
Zero.
She represents pure exhibitionism. She's perfectly content to exist in a bubble of immense wealth without a single shred of dissonance regarding whether she, quote-unquote, earned it.
It's a tragic irony, really.
It is.
The celebrities pushing these dangerous medical theories are doing so because their psychological defense mechanisms are trying to process a misplaced conscience. But, if we pull back from the individual celebrity's brain, the internal psychology is only half of the equation.
Sure.
A celebrity can stand on a soapbox all day long, but the real danger is that society has decided to hand them a microphone and take notes.
Right. Why do we listen?
Exactly. And the author points the finger at a broader cultural shift.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text places the blame for this societal vulnerability squarely on postmodernism.
Which is a bold claim.
Very. The language used is striking. The author actually describes postmodernism as the most virulent of anti-science dogma.
That is a massive indictment of an entire philosophical movement.
It really is.
But to understand why the author blames postmodernism, we have to look at how it redefined expertise. The source defines the core tenet of postmodern thought as the democratization of opinion.
The idea that all viewpoints are welcome.
Right, and that no single viewpoint can be privileged over another.
Because postmodernism originated in the humanities as a tool to deconstruct power structures. In literature or art history, arguing that objective truth is an illusion and that all narratives are equally valid, that can be a really useful intellectual exercise.
But the author argues that when this framework leaked out of the humanities and was applied to the hard sciences, it created structural absurdity.
It weaponized the concept of my truth.
Yes, my truth. If a leading epidemiologist presents decades of peer-reviewed data on vaccines, a postmodern cultural lens doesn't view that data as objective reality.
No, it views it as just the dominant narrative of the medical establishment.
Exactly. Which means a celebrity with, at best, a high school diploma is culturally encouraged to deconstruct that narrative.
And not only are they encouraged, but society actively frames the scientist as arrogant or elitist if they dare to tell the celebrity they're factually incorrect.
We've completely conflated the democratic right to express an opinion with the epistemological validity of that opinion.
That's a great way to put it. The text highlights how extraordinary it is that these figures feel entirely justified in debating highly specialized fields like quantum physics or endocrinology simply because they possess a platform.
The cultural barrier to entry for scientific discourse has just been eradicated.
Completely.
I mean, think about this in literally any other context of applied physics. Imagine you are building a suspension bridge.
Okay.
You hire a structural engineer who has spent 30 years calculating load-bearing tension. But during the design phase, an actor who played an architect in a romantic comedy looks at the blueprints and says, actually, I feel like we should build the support cables out of hemp and positive affirmations.
That would be terrifying.
It would. But if you apply the postmodern democratization of opinion, you have to look at the engineer and say, well, let's honor his perspective. All opinions are equal.
And the bridge is going to collapse the moment a car drives onto it.
Exactly. The structural integrity of our collective knowledge fails when we accommodate fame over methodology.
And the author's frustration culminates in a very direct plea to the entertainment industry. They basically say, entertain the public on the screen, but leave the scientific method to the scientists.
To underscore that point, the text pulls a quote from Confucius.
Oh, I loved this part.
It is thousands of years old, yet it perfectly diagnoses the flaw in our modern media diet. Quote, when you know a thing, to hold that you know it, and when you do not know a thing, to allow that you do not know it. This is knowledge.
It's so simple, but it's brilliant. Recognizing the boundaries of your own ignorance is the foundational requirement for actual intelligence.
Yeah.
And that specific boundary recognition is exactly what is destroyed by the combination of clinical narcissism, an echo chamber of wealth, and a postmodern culture that refuses to privilege objective facts over celebrity feelings.
Well, let's pull all these threads together. We started with claims that defy the laws of physics and biology, mystical water, and eternal youth. We dug into the clinical data, seeing how the entertainment industry selects for high-scoring narcissists and how the intense adulation of fame dismantles their reality testing.
The feedback loop.
Yes. Then we explored the paradox of existential guilt, revealing that these pseudoscientific crusades are actually desperate defense mechanisms against imposter syndrome.
Trying to prove their worth.
Exactly. And finally, we examined how postmodernism removed the cultural guardrails, turning the scientific method into just another subjective opinion to be debated on a daytime talk show.
It's a perfect storm.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you? The celebrity antics described in the source might seem absurd, but the underlying mechanics govern how information flows today.
That's the real takeaway.
We exist in an environment of total information saturation. Navigating this requires ruthlessly evaluating the methodology behind the claims we consume, because a massive platform and a familiar face do not equate to empirical accuracy.
You know, this raises an important question that builds on the author's conclusion, but actually pushes into a different scientific discipline.
Ooh, where are we going?
Well, the text blames the philosophy of postmodernism for leveling the playing field. But perhaps the vulnerability is deeply rooted in our own evolutionary psychology.
How so?
Human cognitive architecture evolved in small tribal structures constrained by Dunbar's number.
Right, the idea that we can only maintain stable relationships with a limited number of people.
Exactly. And for millions of years, our survival depended on trusting familiar, recognizable faces in our immediate tribe. A familiar face literally meant safety.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Today, parasocial relationships have hijacked that wiring. The most recognizable faces in our daily lives are often celebrities we see constantly on screens.
Wow.
Their faces light up the fusiform face area of our brains just like a tribe member would. Conversely, the actual experts, the virologists, the physicists, they're often faceless institutions or just obscure names in journals.
So our brains are tricked into trusting the actor over the scientist because the actor feels like family.
Precisely. The ultimate question is not just why celebrities broadcast pseudoscience. The more vital question is why our brains are so evolutionarily desperate for familiar saviors that we willingly bypass our own critical thinking protocols.
That is a massive shift in perspective, placing the final responsibility right back on our own neurological hardwiring.
Something to mull over.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the psychology of celebrity pseudoscience. Keep questioning the structural integrity of your information, keep examining the credentials of the platforms you trust, and the next time someone offers you an elixir to defy biology, look for the data.